Good morning, Coffee Chat friend and all truth fellow travelers out there in internet land. We had an excellent Coffee Chat meeting last night. It was on successful relationships. That was our overall theme. Wow, we had an amazing turnout. Probably we had close to 20 people there. Such an exchange of ideas. We went straight on, right through until they pretty much kicked us out of there talking about different things. There was so much to share. I'm just going to go through a few points that were brought up. There were so many books and authors mentioned too. It was amazing. We started out with our little talking stick, which Lang brought. It was really nice, nicely done little talking stick. We went around the room and we just asked people to comment if they wanted to on what is a successful relationship. When that term is said, what does that mean? What does that conjure up? Well, I'll just read some buzzwords that came out. Self first was one. In other words, relationship with self first is what is important. Interdependence, mutual, contribution, trust, too huge to define, agreements, integrity, friendship, give and take. There's different types of relationships. One lady mentioned there's a difference between her relationship with her mother when she was a child than now that they're both adults. So different types of relationships. Meeting needs, and a successful relationship is not always seen as successful when in the relationship. It's sometimes seen in retrospect, the value of it. Trust and respect. Happy with who you are. Encourage communication. Feeling right. The relationship has to feel right. Core self. That came up a lot. The idea of it starting in self. Sharing joy. Balance, communication, renewal. Somebody mentioned that a successful relationship must be worked on and renewed. That was interesting. It's all within, and there must be a reciprocation. It's a two-way street, or multi-way street if relationships are multi. There were also a lot of books and authors mentioned. Somebody talked about something called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. Let's see what else there was. There was somebody named Neil Donald Walsh was mentioned. There was a book called Why Men Love Bitches, which is kind of an interesting title. And another book, a sequel to that, called Why Men Marry Bitches. Somebody mentioned that, a lady mentioned that, actually said it's a really good book. It just changed her life. There was somebody else another author called Lo Tice. He's a speaker, I think. I don't know if he's an author, but a speaker. Another one called The Gentle Teaching by John McGee. There was a quote by Mark Twain, somebody mentioned, which was, acid affects the vessel more than what it is poured upon. Somebody was talking about how if we are angry at somebody or what have you, it hurts us more. Our acid of emotion affects where it's coming from more than where it's hitting, kind of thing. What else was there? Wow, there was so much covered here. I wish I could have paraphrased it better. What else? Somebody talked about the golden rule, or maybe even taking it a step farther to what he called the platinum rule. The golden rule is do unto others as you would want done unto you. The platinum rule is do unto others as others would want done unto them. So this was about a communication device, a way of communicating, trying to find out what it is that people want in relationships, and then doing our best to provide that. rather than what, because what he was saying in terms of him and his wife, what he wants. So do unto others as I would want done unto him. So in his case, if he was to do unto his wife as he wants done unto him, she may not want what's done unto him. So that's why the platinum rule, which is an interesting take on things in relationships. Somebody talked about, there was a stick man caricature somewhere about relationships, and there was three different models. One was a large stick man, I believe, and a shorter stick person, and that was to demonstrate the dominant characteristic of some relationships where one dominates over the other. And there was another one which was the two stick men or two stick people back to back. So as you can see, they're leaning against each other. So as you can see, if one falls down, the other falls down. So they're dependent on one another, really. And the third one was both of them standing side by side holding hands. They have their feet on the ground independently. So they're independent, but they're supporting one another in their gesture of their hands clasped like this. It's quite like that in terms of a better way, perhaps, because relationships, a lot of people talked about how if it can be more like a friendship, and a friendship is like a relationship where there is freedom. It's not about trying to control the other. It's about loving the other for who they are. Wow, there was a lot. Like I say, there was about 20 of us there, and we kept going. I did have a few little things to share, which I shared some of it like in spots. So I'll just go through what I had to share here right now as quickly as I can. And it may seem a little bit off base. It may seem a little bit crazy, but to me it's important because relationships are what, first of all, relationships in terms of our human interaction and any interaction really is what we go through all the time. And if we can improve that somehow, we empower ourselves in how we relate. And furthermore, especially our human relationships, if we can improve them, it seems to improve everything else, because life seems to go smoother. If we're trying to lose weight, if we're trying to achieve something in our work and so on, if we have better relationships, we're more at peace. We're more with what we're doing because we're not in some sort of a situation or in mental strife all the time, which is really takes away a lot of our energy. A very practical approach to it. I'm just going to share what I had here and see if it brings up something. If it sounds a little strange, what I'm saying, it's just, first of all, what I'm saying. It's my perspective, and you can, send me a message or whatever and ask me for clarity on what I'm saying. Okay, first of all, to start out with, the reason the topic successful relationships came along is because the previous meeting we had was on success. And what I noticed is that we tended to go towards, in our talk about success, our conversation eventually led into relationships and what is success within relationships. So I figured what the heck, we could probably run with that and just see how it worked. And it seemed like it worked out because we had a lot of interest in the topic. So that was great. But about a week before this event, my wife asked me, what's the conversation going to be about at Coffee Chat next? And I said, well, it's about successful relationships. And it didn't take her long to respond with, well, you don't know anything about that, And she's probably right to a great extent. None of us really know. None of us have all the answers to everything. I certainly don't. I certainly don't have very many answers at all. It's just my thoughts. And maybe what I say will twig something in somebody, and it'll mean something, but we'll see how it goes anyways. I might actually take off for a couple seconds when I'm in the conversation here and go get a little prop that I was going to use in the event, but it might not be necessary though. All right, relationships. Well, we talk about about success, the word success as in a chain reaction. You know, whatever we do here affects us over here. When the king dies, he's succeeded by the heir to the throne. I mean, that's the nature of the word success. So we're all successful in that respect at any one time. It's just that we might not have what we want within the success. So it's about defining the success that we want, right? And relationship, of course, comes from the word relate, how we interact. How is it? So what I would say, and I agree with what a lot of people said there, is a successful relationship, as I define it, begins with myself. Because how can I have a successful relationship if I don't even have a successful relationship with myself to begin with? How can I have it with anybody else? And in a relationship, most people, I'm not talking about any specific type of relationship, relationships in general with other people. For the most part, we want peace. We want things, we want qualities. And then, of course, Coffee Chat, we talk about qualities of life, right? But we want qualities, things like peace of mind, understanding, harmony, love, caring, and in romantic relationships, you know, physicality as well, right? But these are the things that most people want. So how can we have this for ourselves if we don't understand ourselves? How can we improve these things within ourselves? How can we improve love within ourselves if we don't understand ourselves? Well, my impression on this would be the first thing that we would have to do, the first step we would have to do is to accept or admit where it is. If we don't know something, the first thing we have to do is admit that we don't know it, or that we're at a certain level. I know this is not quite related, but it's somewhat related. Most people have heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. It is about helping people get off the bottle, get off the alcohol, right? And the first step that they go through, my understanding is anyways, is admitting where they are with respect to alcohol. Because somebody who's addicted to anything, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, if they're not willing to admit that they're addicted to it, then there can be no gains made. Another example would be if, and I've used this before in another video at one time, a long time ago I think, if you and I are traveling somewhere, we know where we want to go. It's a certain event. We're going to a concert somewhere in a certain city. We know where it is, we have the address, we've seen the stadium, we've even been in the stadium before. Except for one thing, we've taken a wrong turn on our way into the city. We're lost, we have no GPS, we have no map. How much good does it do us that we know where we're going, that we know why we're going there? All those things are completely irrelevant, because the first order of business is to admit to ourselves that we're lost. Because in the admitting that we're lost, that's our current circumstance. In admitting our current circumstance, we can then begin the process of finding a way out of it. Asking others for help, this sort of thing. That's, to me, in relationships, if we want to improve, in knowing ourselves with respect to that circumstance, is to admit that we have something to learn. If I'm of the mind that, I don't need to know anything, I know everything about relationships, then how does that allow an environment for learning? It doesn't, does it? Now, how can we learn more about ourselves? Well, there's many ways, and here's one idea that I have. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave you looking at a blank wall for a second. I'm going to run downstairs and get a little prop that I was going to use, that I used actually in another speech. Just hold that thought for a second. I'll be right back. Clankety clank, clankety clank, clankety clank. I'm back. All right. Okay, I did this a couple of days ago at a speech I did downtown for a bunch of computer geeks. It's called Bar Camp. And I'll do it here. Now I got to give credit where credit is due. What I've got is a series of bowls. A larger bowl, smaller bowl, smaller bowl. Kind of like the Russian dolls. You keep taking them out. I saw somebody use this bowl system to explain something. It was something different he was explaining, but he used the same system of bowls. So I got to give credit where credit is due. Dwayne Suter Miller, CBA Toastmasters. All right, what I've got here, I'll just lift it up so you can see it. It's an upside down bowl sitting with little tags on it. And what I've written on these, I just wrote a couple of tags. One is called father, one is called worker, one is called mechanic, one is called husband. I could put many things on there, but what those represent are identities or personal identities that I could attach to myself, right? Because very often when we ask somebody, what are you? They say, well, I'm an engineer, I'm a doctor, I'm an astronaut, I'm all sorts of different things. Well, these are rather superficial, when you say. They are not really what we are. Not in completeness anyways. They're more like roles. Now, just as a side, this may sound like, Steve, whoa, you're getting way off base here. What has this got to do with relationships? Well, just bear with me here for a moment, and I hope that it will explain how we can have more successful relationships. All right? So, this is normally how we see ourselves, most of us, is in what we do in terms of a role. And as you can see here, we can change that role. Look, I could use this as a hat, right? And in this moment, I'm the husband. When I'm talking to my wife, in this moment, I'm the father. I go to work. In this moment, I'm the worker. And so on. You see what I mean? So these are like hats that we have. But it's so often how we relate to others. When we're at work, when I'm at work, I relate to others as a worker. When I'm with my kids, I relate to my kids as a father. You see? When I'm with a friend, if I had a friend, one here I say I relate to people as my friends as a friend. But is that really what I am? See, because all of these roles have their limitations. And of course, the challenges we have in our relationships are very often as the result of our limitations within them, right? So for me anyways, it helps to try to relate to others through what they are more truthfully, as me being more honest with what I am more truthfully. Am I really just a worker when I'm at work? Is that all I am? Or am I more than that? So I ask the question then, and also, is my coworker just a worker? Well, what I've discovered, and this is going to sound, Steve, you're going to say, Steve, this is ridiculously simple. What's your point? Well, sometimes we overcomplicate things, is my point. Yes, it is extremely simple. Is what I'm going to do here is I'm going to peel this back, And underneath that, you're going to see something else. So what it is that animates this is like a common denominator. And you can't read it probably on the front there. But what that says is, it says, in my case, it says man. You could write on there, woman, human being, whatever it is that you want to write on there. But what this is representing is that the foundation of all of these is the mankind, or the human being, the mentality, the physicality, the emotionality, the real, truthful, living entity, which makes all that possible. What gives life to the worker is the man. In other words, the worker is given life by the man in my case, not the other way around. If this passes away, there's no longer this. But I could stop being a worker and I would still be this. See, so this is primary over that. And if I remember that in relating to people, that I'm no longer just relating to a wife or a child, which I can perceive all kinds of differences from myself, that is the relationship. It's a relationship of differences now. Because if I'm relating to a wife, I'm not a wife. So therefore there's that contrast and that challenge to deal with the contrast at times. However, if I'm dealing with human being, now I'm dealing with myself and where it begins, because I'm also human being. See? Now, I'm going to go even a step farther. This may not be necessary, but it's for everybody. But see if you see something of value in here. I see it as necessary for me, because I like to be able to see the connection between us. Because when there's a connection between us, what's happening to the other is happening to me in a way. And that really helps in the communication process and the relationship in general. Now, you might not think that, see, I like to use the Shrek movie little skit there where Donkey is walking behind Shrek and he's nagging at him. He's always chattering away, and finally Shrek gets fed up and he says, "Donkey, we ogres are like onions. We have many layers." You see, and there's many layers to us as well. There's much more to us than we think at times. And I'm going to tell you a little story here about when I went to see my brothers. When I went to my brother's funeral, rather, a few years ago. My brother passed away at a fairly early age, but he was an accomplished man. He was a professional. He was an accomplished musician. He was a father and husband, talking about these roles, right? And he's respected in his community. But what was interesting to me, I'd always known it intellectually, but it dawned on me so powerfully experientially when I stood in front of the open casket and there was my brother's body there, recognizable, yes, as the body I knew of him. But the interesting thing was that he wasn't there. And this may sound a little strange. Steve, where are you going with this? But the man is more, or the human being is more than just the physical body lying there. There's like a software program running inside, which we can call whatever we want to call, life force, what have you. And that to me is the same type of force that exists in everyone. It's almost like the ether that connects us all. We all, while we're here, have life. We don't necessarily think of it as a different type of life, what you have and what I have. We both have life, and it's precious. And it is that unknown. And that's why I say, without that, even though it looks smaller than the rest of them, it's what gives life to the human, which in turn gives life to all of the roles through which we relate to others. So if we can think of that, even using our rationality at times, if we think in terms of, in our relationships, that more fundamentally than just being a husband, or just being a wife, or a father, or a worker, and these sorts of things, if more fundamentally we remember that we are all human beings, and as human beings we have this life force which is like a source for us all, and through it then at least there's no evidence to the contrary, that we're all interconnected. Because when we experience this, and some people experience this through prayer, through meditation, through contemplation and these sorts of things, they experience this, what the New Age people call oneness with everything and everyone. And from that experience and that realization that, yes, see, this might sound a little hokey, but there's no denying that it's there, especially when we see somebody who was alive one moment and they're so-called dead the next. The hardware is there, so obviously it's not the hardware. It's like we took our computer and we wiped the hard drive. Okay, from one moment it could function as a computer, the next minute we can get it to do nothing because it doesn't have the intelligence there anymore. It doesn't have any intelligence running through it. It's just simply a hunk of material we could throw against the wall. So it's not the same thing anymore, right? That foundation, that mysterious foundation, is more truthfully what we are. Because as you can see, without it, there cannot be this with any function, with any life. So in the order of creation, in the order of what we are, rather than this, yes, it's an aspect of us. We are this. And even more accurately, we are this because without this, we don't have this. To me, this is a fundamental place to start in terms of our relationships and how we get to know ourselves. What we are more truthfully is something we can probably never really define, but it's much more, and it's more universal, and it's more connected. And through that, through experiencing that intellectually and also experientially, we get to realize that more truthfully, we are brothers and sisters in a way, connected to all. And in a very real way, how we treat others is how we treat ourselves. Because nothing is going to pass by this without us on a very deep level really knowing, because it's emanating from our life. So when we treat others in a certain way, when we treat others with disrespect, we're disrespecting ourselves, because the life in them is the life in us. There's no getting away from that. At this point, there is no longer them and me. There's only this life force, if that sounds kind of strange. So we can remind ourselves, yes, we're still going to live as individual men and women, and that's true. And yes, we're going to still have our roles, but we realize now that the role is given life by what we are as individual man and woman, and what we are as individual man and woman is given life by what we are more fundamentally. I'm not going to go much more into this, I'm already at 30 minutes, except to say, to me anyways, this is the starting point. Just like in AA, is it in admitting and accepting where we are, that we might not know everything, and through that we search, we find out more fundamentally what we are. And in my case, I've never found that really, except to realize that on a very deep level there is mystery and there is connection with, at least there's no evidence to the contrary, but it seems to work. Because from that standpoint of connectedness, that idea of connectedness, I get to realize that how I treat others affects me. And I can remember lots of examples of treating people badly, and I feel bad about it. or treating people with love and respect, and that gets to feel good. Just some thoughts. Successful relationships, then, in my conclusion, do indeed, as many people have said, begin with us in how we relate to ourselves. And if we can relate to ourselves on a deeper level, a more truthful level, a more fundamental level, the more successful, as we define it, is our relationship with ourselves, and by extension, with others. Thank you for listening. It's been a joy. I look forward to our next chat. Bye-bye for now.